Welcome to Two Gals and a Glass Half Full. We are Dr. Jess and Dr. Bobbie, two physical therapists just trying to live healthy most of the time and doing our best to see our personal glasses as half full. Some days that is a lot harder than others. Sometimes we interview others more knowledgeable than us on different topics about things that we don't know. And then sometimes you are stuck with Dr. Jess and I sharing our knowledge and information. So make sure you hit the subscribe button below to stay up to date on all the Two Gals happenings. Before we get started, first, Dr. Jess, what is in your glass today?
Well, this morning it's kind of chilly outside, so I'm on to a second cup of coffee. It's just one of those mornings, just need a little bit of warmth. Dr. Bobbie, what's in your glass?
Dr. Jess, what is chilly down in Florida?
It was in the 50s this morning, freezing.
Oh, we're getting negative coming in. We are at a high of 30 right now.
Yeah.
So
it's a little bit.
I like the Florida weather better.
Yes. Yeah. It's a little easier in the winter. Harder in the summer, but easier in the winter. Yeah.
We're having a white Christmas. So there's growing up in the north, there's nothing quite like a white Christmas. So
yeah, I like it.
So what's for in my glass? I got Dunkin', so I haven't been really trying to have caffeine at all. And I was just really, really missing a warm drink in the morning. And so I treated myself to hot chocolate this morning, which still has a tiny bit of caffeine, but nothing like coffee.
Right. Not like my cup.
No.
Yeah. Yeah. So we are excited for the end of the year. And in this episode, we're going to just do a bit of a recap of what we've gone through in this year. And then we'll end with looking into 2023 and some of the exciting growth that we're doing with the podcast and how everything is going to continue to grow to support the individuals that listen to us. So with the end of the year, it's kind of fun to look back. And we started this podcast back in February, and Dr. Bobbie and I went to a conference together in San Antonio, Texas. We flew through and into and out of snowstorms to get there. I left Florida, flew into a storm, and I think I was in Colorado for my connection. And it was really dicey if I was going to be able to leave Colorado to then make my connection into Texas. And Dr. Bobbie could barely get out of Chicago to make it down to Texas.
I was going to say, we were having unprecedented snow, and I had a direct flight. It was a direct flight from Chicago to San Antonio. So I knew if I was in the air, I'd make it. That was until 2.5 hours into the flight, and we had to make emergency landing in Dallas because our plane broke, which is only half an hour, 35-minute plane ride to San Antonio. And then Dallas, of course, is getting hit by the storm that Jess had in Denver or up in Colorado up north. So then it was we need to get out fast enough so we can get to San Antonio. It was a ride.
And then when we were there, they had just unprecedented cold, and we were getting these notices in our hotel that the electric might go out and we'd be without heat.
We had to fill your bathtub with water.
Yeah. So it was a fun start, but in that trip, when we were attending that conference for continuing education that's just required for our profession, that's when we decided to do this podcast together. So it was just a fun time to be able to have our thoughts and dreams and just have the time together to really kind of think about, what do we want to grow? What would that look like? How could this support individuals that we would be supporting in a different way than, treating one-on-one with physical therapy. So that was kind of a little bit of a bumpy start to an adventure.
But it was fun.
Doing. Yes. Yeah.
And then we recorded our first little intro episode, and we reorganized the hotel. We had a little inspiration from wine, and of course in a paper cup from the hotel.
With a twist off cap, because we were too cheap to buy a wine opener. So we got a bottle of wine with a twist off cap.
That was the requirement as we were looking through the wines, was which one has a twist off cap? That one? Great.
There we go. Walkable to CVS. Yeah. Oh, the joys. Only high class. Yeah. So
it was where we started, and it was a fun start.
And you have to start somewhere, and it all starts based on an idea of something that we'd been kind of thinking about, and it wasn't until we were together that we really had the time to actually kind of go through what would the logistics be, what would we want out of this, and how would we want it to grow. That way it could support, listeners. Because that's like one of our biggest things. Like as physical therapists, we can treat individuals one-on-one, help them with their pain, mobility, balance, whatever that might be. But we're not like supporting individuals in the long term of like, what does it truly mean to make lifestyle change in order to kind of get you to where we would, we want to be able to support you. And that's just hard in a clinic setting, because insurance reimbursement's not designed for that. And it's just like, it's a little bit of a different setup, with how a clinic works. Yeah. So,
And I was going
with
to
us
say, and
starting
just our
clinic,
healthcare and
yeah,
our healthcare in general doesn't really aim at prevention too much. Like there is a
right.
little bit, there's a little change happening, which is awesome and great. We need a lot more of it, but still, like a lot of prevention is cash based. And I think there's a whole benefit of that whole society of cash based, health insurance, or not health insurance, but cash based
Right.
treatments.
Yeah.
But yeah, like there's not a lot of prevention out there for like how to prevent the issues, so you don't even have to deal with them in the first place.
And what does it mean to invest in you as an individual, right? Like, what does that look like? What does that mean? It's not something where you can just say, oh, I'm just going to make sure I exercise, or I'm just going to make sure I eat well, or I'm just going to make sure that I use toxin-free products, or that I'm, trying to meditate. I mean, it's really all of it. That's the thing, is that if you're really going to be an individual that's getting your needs met, it's all of it. It's what you put in your body, what you put on your body, how you move your body, how you're dealing with stress, how you're dealing with mental well-being, how are you sleeping. All of these are what's important. And so trying to tackle it all at once is like overwhelming. So then you kind of don't. Where it's like we make these New Year's resolutions, and it's like, I'm going to like, whatever it might be, one big thing, but is that really like a holistic, sustainable plan? It might be, but it might not be. And so this is like our way of trying to support individuals that choose to listen about making small, sustainable changes. That way you can kind of slowly fill your cup and see that cup as half full instead of half empty. And through that lens, more change can happen in a much easier way, because you're not trying to tackle it all at once. And that's our goal, because that's kind of what we want to be able to do in healthcare, is kind of help decrease preventable illness and help make people a little bit happier in their day-to-day lives. So treating pain, we can do that, but it's the rest of it that the podcast really helps with, which is great.
And I like the little steps, because I think we all start, like when New Year's comes, we all have these big goals of like, I want to lose 20 pounds this year. I want to be out of debt. I want to, like, all these different goals, but they're such big goals if you don't know how to break them down into little steps and don't know how to make the little goals. What happens is like, you're not going to see improvement towards that big goal if you have no little goals. And then you just feel, you kind of get tired and you give up, or, you feel deflated in a way. And like, that's where the podcast, with all the small little changes, it's just about the little small changes each day that you can do.
Right. Yeah. So that's kind of how we set the podcast up, is we just chose each month. In 2022, we had a topic for the month, and then we broke that topic down into different episodes where either Dr. Bobbie and I would talk, or we would interview different people about, a topic that they know more than we do. And so we've followed a bit of the national narrative. That way we're kind of in line with what people are already maybe talking, hearing about. And so, we've got Heart Health Awareness Month in February. So it's like, oh, that's perfect. We can talk about exercise during that. And then that kind of moves into nutrition and stress awareness and mental health awareness. So like all of these different months, it was great because we were able to just like use people that we know or people that were referred to us and interview them, especially when we got into more of the mental health stuff. And we were able to interview a number of different mental health counselors who, I mean, I learned a ton just interviewing them. And it's great. Like I have a huge appreciation for mental health counseling. And this only further helped with the appreciation for mental health counselors and what a great view they can have on helping us not only process things that have happened, but then also, again, how to frame that thinking, even how to like with the interpersonal relationships, different ways of being mindful of your partner, your friend, relationships that may or may be toxic or not toxic. So each of these episodes kind of delves a little bit deeper into some of these ideas. And so to kind of break it up to make it easier to find the episodes on YouTube, we do have playlists. So if you're listening to this and you're like, oh man, there's like maybe some content that I missed, just check out our YouTube channel. All the links are at the in the episode description here. And then YouTube is where the playlists are. So it's a lot easier to search for topics on YouTube than it is in like Apple Podcast or on Spotify, things like that. So Dr. Bobbie, what was like one of your favorite episodes this year?
I have to say, so one of my favorite, there's two, and they all come in the month of June with sleep. One was just learning about sleep and like the connection between depression and anxiety and suicide and how much our sleep affects us. And then the second one was about, again, same topic, was we all hear about sleep apnea. And we all hear about like how you just stop breathing or like you need to wear this mask. But it, like when we learned like that there's much more to it than that. It's not just people that are overweight. It's any healthy people too. You know, it's not what we used to think of it. So like to me, that was so neat and so it taught me a lot.
Oh yeah, I learned a bunch about sleep apnea, and I'm actually much better about scanning for that when I do an initial intake. And if sleep apnea is listed, I definitely ask about like, okay, how's that being managed? Who are you currently, talking to about this, or what's your plan? Or somebody that I've already been treating that maybe had to stop using their CPAP because of surgery and positioning. I'm much more like, hey, what's going on with the sleep apnea? Like, have you gotten back to management? They're like, oh no, it's uncomfortable to use that, and I don't know if I should. But then they're telling me that they're still so tired and they're not recovering as quickly as they'd like. I'm like, well, that, remember, you still do have other things we're managing other than your post-surgical recovery. And they're like, oh gosh, I forgot about that. So it's helped me be much more aware of the importance of management of sleep apnea. Absolutely. Yeah.
How about you, Dr. Jess? What was some of your favorites?
I definitely think the but versus and episode was a good one. It's just such an easy thing to change in how you speak, instead of saying but and putting yourself down and like just kind of devaluing what you're saying. Using and or challenging yourself to use and it's a good reframing, I would say, of how you speak. So that was probably one of my favorites, just because it was such an easy to implement right away episode. I think one of the other ones, I mean, there's so many that were good. But I will say I really love the toxin-free information. So like we've got so many episodes that were in toxin-free month. The episode we did with Anna had like, I think a nice big breakdown of like all of the different ways of thinking about toxin-free products. And so I thought that was like a good big picture episode, because that's kind of where I first started getting into toxin-free, of like, what's my big picture here? And I really enjoy the big picture, because that way you can get this good breadth of understanding, and then from there you can pick and choose where you want to go with it. Yeah. So
I would say one other part that I loved, and I think sometimes we don't lean on those that are more wise than us, is speaking with actually your husband's grandma, and then with my godparents, and speaking to those that have many years behind them of wisdom and experience, and just like if we would just learn a little bit from what they know, it's nice to get a different perspective.
Absolutely.
They've been there. They've been through our stages of life. They've seen it. And at the end, they know, what's important and what's not, and don't stress this and that. And it's just nice to hear that from someone that has kind of been there, done it, and still being very successful.
Absolutely. And I think that's kind of the point of the podcast, is to draw on the experience of others, whether it's experience in a very practical way of, here's how to implement a nutrition plan, versus, more of the soft skills of relationships and just life experience as well. And just kind of constantly learning and growing from the community around us is what's going to help push all of us forward, because we don't need to reinvent the wheel. It's sharing knowledge is a big part of the podcast, and so many people have such great things to share. I mean, it's
Oh my
wonderful.
gosh.
Yeah,
Yes.
absolutely wonderful.
I don't think we did an episode where I literally, and even just you and me, like I don't think we did an episode where I didn't learn something. Like something that was said that like clicked with me, or like made me understand something better, or something new.
Right. So that's kind of a bit of our recap of 2022. You're not trying to like go through each of the episodes in this podcast today. What we wanted to do is just kind of like, shed light on like, we have come a long way, and there is a lot of really good content and a lot of really smart and passionate people that we've been able to talk about over the course of this year. And we're so thankful for each of those individuals that have come on and shared their knowledge with us. And, we want to make sure that everybody's aware of, the amount of growth that we've gone through with just being able to listen. And so hopefully other people have experienced that same amount of growth of knowledge. But now we've got the announcement of 2023. So it's going to be a big year of growth for all of us. And we're going to start the year with goal setting, because goal setting is really the best way that you can kind of create that foundation for being able to move forward. So creating those small sustainable changes really kind of relies on, what do you want out of it? So our motto or mantra for 2023 is putting you first. Because if you can't put you first and fill your own bucket, you're going to be so depleted as the year goes on, because nobody's filling your own bucket. And that doesn't mean that you're selfish and take everything for you. That's not what putting you first means. Putting you first means, how can you make sure that your needs are met? And what are those needs? So those needs are diverse, right, Dr. Bobbie? Like, it's not
right. It's not just one,
eat healthy.
Not one bucket.
It's not one bucket.
You have so many buckets, that need to be filled, and you can't possibly fill someone else's and be a light for someone else if you don't have your own bucket full first. And especially I see a lot of that with like moms, always for kids, and husbands, and this and that. And, you see in husbands too, and you see it in grandparents. Like everyone, is trying to help everyone else, but they're running ragged themselves and running on thin strings. So if you put yourself first, you can do so much more for others.
Yeah. And sometimes it's a matter of just learning, what do you need? Right. And so that's kind of where the goal setting comes in, is what do you consider to be valuable for your health, for your emotional health, mental well-being, physical health, all of that. Like, what does that look like for you? And then how do you make that realistic? Like, how do you actually implement it? And so that's hard.
I mean, we can talk about it all the time, and like I find that in my own life a lot of times. Oh yeah, I'm gonna do this, and then just 3 weeks later I'm like, I haven't done anything. Like talking about it, dreaming about it, that's the easier part. The harder part is like, how do I actually physically do this?
Right. And so that's kind of how the year's going to go. We're going to start off with topics that are more specific to filling your specific bucket in different ways, through gaining knowledge about exercise and nutrition, and, toxin-free products, and all sorts of other great topics that are to be supportive to you as an individual. And then as the year progresses, that turns into more topics that are related to how you're interacting with the world around you, which is more of that interpersonal relationships and leadership, things like that. So it's really kind of meant for the year to build on itself. And then by the end of the year, hopefully you can look back like we have, and we're like, wow, gosh, think back to February. Like, yikes, like that feels like it was so long ago.
now we have like nice lights. I remember we like got this free like phone light from
Yeah.
the conference we went to. And we're trying to set it up for us, and oh my goodness.
Yeah. Yep. So hopefully you all can have as much fun as we do and enjoy the topics. And, definitely make sure to follow us. We're on social media. We do have a paid membership group as well. And that kind of, in that group, we're able to do a little bit more specific sustainable change with like more specific things that can be done. It's not meant to feel overwhelming or like a lot of work. You interact as much as you want or as little as you want. But you can also just participate with the free podcast as well. So please follow us, give us any feedback that you find might be helpful for you as well. Our goal is to meet the needs of our listeners and do what we can. Yeah.
And before we go, we also have a Facebook group that is free, that we give a lot of information. So if you want to follow us on there, it's still Two Gals in a Glass Half Full, but you can just search as a Facebook group. And also, we want to say Merry Christmas. We hope Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, like whatever your family's celebrating. We hope you're having a wonderful holiday season with your families. And thank you for listening and sharing us on your holiday as well.
All right. Bye, everybody.